Hello, are we rolling? Home 7 days before going back out to film in Romania. So, what do we have to do as filmmakers? Been working on a script with my writer to get some funding for the next InfinEights. We have won our first official award with Beyond the Curve, which has been awesome. That's going to screen Evanescence, Flow of Consciousness, which is the first part of the triple series.
Thida Nathalie is a busy filmmaker who has travelled the world in pursuit of personal human stories.
Paid for all of that by myself.
So Thida, could you introduce yourself?
My name's Thida Nathalie and I'm a filmmaker.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Alright.
Anyway,
Yes.
Thida employs both freestyle and scripted narratives in her films and documentaries, capturing rich and evocative portraits of unique people and unusual places. I first met Thida through her micro-budget filmmakers group, a popular meetup community for filmmakers and producers. I caught up with her at a private screening of her latest short film, Aurea Rides Time, part 2 of her InfinEights series. So Thida, can you introduce yourself again?
Okay, so my name's Thida Nathalie and I am a filmmaker. I've been making films since 2015. I love human stories and getting into the mind and soul of a person. It's the thing that I like the most, trying to understand other people. I probably went into it because I found it was a way to also understand myself.
How do you choose the stories you make? You've often said to me that your stories almost happen at random.
Things always happen. In fact, I started filming because there was just too many stories popping out around me. I always make a joke and say it's like I'm a story magnet. These are not simple, boring stories. They're very strange stories, like the man who dug up giant bones and agreed for me to film him. He said the BBC didn't want to film for the BBC, but I kind of begged him and he kind of felt sorry for me and he let me film this fascinating story of giants coming through stargates and all sorts of conversations like we've known each other for years. You know, you just met them and you're around there eating pasta and they're telling you all about these peculiarities. So they're really strange. These really are unique stories. I'm not saying every story is unique, there's a story everywhere, but these are particularly strange and particular, and somehow, I have the opportunity to make them.
You've mentioned to me in the past that there's a difference between your unscripted and scripted stories. Could you explain the difference?
I mean, scripted means you actually know where you're going to go with it. Unscripted, like the first Bright Like the Sun, it was so much more creative and actually really rewarding when you finally fight, because you're living in the now moment with unscripted. You're really co-creating. You see a bird, let's catch that, and you're kind of on holiday in film, but then in the post-production, you've just got to tie that all in. Whereas if you've got a scripted thing, you actually know the story and things. But even with a scripted thing, it wasn't amazingly well scripted, and I had to create some kind of better story in the post, in the cut. But it was still a lot more, you knew what you were getting, you know. And so there's reassurance in one way, there's safety. What you gain, you lose in other things. There's not such spontaneity, there's not such a creative feel about it. You get creative maybe superimposing with the music, but in terms of actually the shots or the story, it's not that creative because it's already been done in storyboard. They're both unique. I think they're both really good. If you've got a team, you need the second one. People don't like uncertainty. They like to know what they're doing and if it's going to get anywhere. Yeah, it attracts different energy and a different product. So it was good for me to do it because I'm very go with the flow, very in the moment, very able to be flexible and change and come up with an idea in that moment. Like everything I've ever done has been like that. Like I don't even design, you know, a room or something with a drawing. I just kind of be in the moment. And then you know, sometimes you regret you didn't think where the electric plugs are, but then you just wing it. But, you know, it's two different brains, and it's good. If you're like that, it's good to try the other one. And if you're like the other one, it's good to try and be more fluid. It's just good for your mental health and your spiritual journey, I think.
Tell me about Bright Like the Sun, your first episode in the InfinEights series. How did that come about?
That's a film that was made when I was in Burma on a shoot for one of my very first protagonists in a documentary called The Empire of Good Deeds, which I'm still working on now. It's been 7-8 years. And in that condition, it's really, really tough to keep going as a lone filmmaker with just yourself. You know, you don't see it's not like I have a budget. I'm self-funded. I drip feed myself with it. You know, when I've got the money, I've got no team. I'm not trying to cry me a river. I'm just saying this is how it actually is. And so in many ways you've got freedom, but in many ways you've really got to have your own back and see through the project yourself. And so for that you need a lot of ongoing motivation, and it gets really tough in certain conditions. So in Burma, I can deal with the weather, I can deal with sleep on the floor, it's harder for me to deal with people for long periods of time, but you know, I was in a good place, but it was really tough. Physically, mentally, emotionally, it was very tough. And I just thought, God, I don't even know if this film's going to happen. I'm a million miles from home. What would I do now if I had the chance, you know, to make something I really wanted? And I thought I'd make a film about a child. And I think hitting that rock bottom in a way of emotionally with your filmmaking just opens an opportunity for something that you really connect to. And so as I thought that, I was walking around and the tailor's son waved at me, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, the universe, I'd make a film on that child. And then I went in the next day and I asked his father, and I had no idea that this was going to turn into the InfinEights series, but I just loved the child. I was in the moment. The child loved me, and we just spent a week filming kind of observational documentary. And then you're kind of thinking, how are you going to turn that into a film? And then it dawned on me to give him some words, some script. And then I got some volunteers that liked what I was doing. They were bored and they were like, I'll hold the mic and things. So I got a little small team. And then, I don't know, before you know it, there was a small film of a child with superimposed voiceover. And then I thought, why don't I superimpose some visual effects? And in the end, it became a really beautiful award-winning film, which was amazing because I just had never dreamed that I'd ever win an award for my films. I mean, an award's an award, but it just gives you a lot of validation when you're starting out in something to win anything. So I did buy a trophy, even though you had to pay for it, because I just wanted to see it on the wall and be like, you can make film. And that was it. It just felt great. And so it opened up a lot of stuff for me, and I decided I'd make another one after that, and as many as I could with children. And how it became a superhero film is because it was everything I ever wanted to do. It was a film about a boy, child, but then these children that are superheroes. And of course, it's always a reflection of us. And I had such difficulty at school, feeling, this is what I remember, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but feeling like outcast and not fitting in, and just alone a lot, and just not connecting to my peers. And that just went on and on for years, you know. And I remember little silly things like hiding away. And when you look back on it, you know, you don't realise how you detach from that reality. But when you're in that moment, or if it was happening to your own child, it's quite sad. And of course, we cultivate our personalities from those experiences. And I thought, well, there's so many other children out there going through this. And a lot of the time now, you have all these labels of kids on the spectrum, and they are considered as different, and we do accept, probably I would have been considered on the spectrum for sure, you know, if I'd had tests. I had a few good teachers, but if I had a bit more attention at that time, I would have probably had an easier time. I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm really grateful about all of that now. I think it kick-started my evolution spiritually, perhaps, but I wanted to honour those children and give them a voice because of being so different and being born into this world where they feel So they probably feel so different, so outcast in a way. I wanted to give them that voice. So at the end of each of my films, I dedicate it to a particular situation, like a child being outcast or born into conflict or something like that.
I remember reading about starseeds and indigo children. Are these stories along those lines?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So as I say, I based it on things I enjoyed. So my own upbringing and connection with children and seeing and hearing myself and projecting that into the stories. But also a lot of the beliefs that I've come across or experiences I've had on my own spiritual path has been very much knitted into my films. For me, it's very important to express those things, but I do it through the film. So all these children are superheroes. So on a 3D human existence, they're just different outcasts, maybe on the spectrum. But actually, that's because they're stealth superheroes. They come from a different dimension. They incarnate into human bodies. So they have obviously difficulty with such a limited situation of a human body and where they are to express and be the entirety that they are, you know, the powerful, full energetic beings that can heal and change the planet that they are. But as they mature in their journey, they all go through these little glimpses of who they are. And so the story is about capturing a little slice of time for each child when they're going through that. Like, say, with Aurea now, she's actually a master time traveller. So she can change her form and go back in space-time or jump the quantum leap, basically, in time. And so she's very different. She's not human, you know, they're superhuman children. So we can say they do have starseed DNA. They're not fully human. And the prequel talks about where they come from originally, which is the centre of the Earth. But they've incarnated throughout the centre of the Earth. But it's all very subtle. A lot of it's based on some books that I read, but also, like I say, my own personal experiences, which are like a little bit private, but you know, I'm happy to talk about some. And I try to reflect the children going through this journey of discovering they are not fully human and here to do a good deed, here to save the planet. That's how the story goes.
So do you believe these things are happening in the real world?
Yeah, I think that this is happening everywhere. I think that humans are all getting activated in DNA, the ones that are here for a reason, the ones that have incarnated from different places or have mixed DNA. You know, in like mainstream or New Age science, they'll talk about indigo children. These children are step up. So they have a higher strand DNA, 48 strand DNA. So that means that they are much more advanced to the terrestrial humans, which are 12 strand, or the 24 strand, which would be considered indigo. These are 48 strand. So they have a lot of abilities, and they have a different template, and they majoritively have an activated plasma body. And this will all come out in probably New Age stream at some point. So this is just my way to keep the current state of affairs open and available.
So can you tell us more about how Aurea Rides Time was made?
So Aurea was made in the lockdown, in the sense that we couldn't leave the UK, so I thought, well, now's as good a time as any to try my hand at something really new, which is a scripted film. So that was done by joining a meetup and then putting a call out and getting different people to come and help in the group. We had about 6 people, and we filmed that over a period of 7 or 8 days, we did have pickups to do, but it was a lot of winging it. I think probably out of the footage, we've maybe used 20% of what we shot, which isn't terrible because we had a storyboard. It's much better than the normal things I do, where I just shoot a lot of reels and don't use it all. So it's expensive because you obviously have to pay for different sections. The lighting was done with a gaffer and that was discounted to us, but very professional, brought all his kit. Amazing experience for us to work with people like that know what they're doing. You can see that the industry pours money onto films, but you know, I've made a film with £500, so I know about micro budget spending, and I know that if you try and do stuff yourself, if you just try to get good at it, you can cover a lot of stuff. I would invest in the editor and possibly some technical stuff. I'm okay with cinematography, but if I wasn't, I'd invest in a cinematographer or DOP and an editor. But otherwise you can pretty much do as much as you can yourself. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube out there. It's very hard to work with people, but people do they treated me like the director, so it's easier because everyone has their place.
As well as being a skilled filmmaker, you obviously have a very deep spiritual motivation for what you do. Do you believe it's helpful to be in touch with these forces?
I think there's so many invisible forces out there, and if you can tap into the quantum field or, you know, any of these things beyond matter, beyond time, space, in any way, trusting in the universe is another great example. That's how I believe I get my stories, because I'm just so open. And in that respect, in that particular thing, and I don't expect anything, and so therefore there's everything there for me to pick. And so in that way it's really suited for something unique and special, and maybe the universe wants to push a certain thing and it needs that communicator, that conduit, and then it finds me. And you know, I think that's why I could never go commercial. That's why I could never... It's very hard for me. I just shut down. I've been offered a job by some really good production houses, but I just doesn't feel right. So because I already know what's going to happen, and there are enough people doing that already. But maybe I just feel that it just doesn't suit my personality. So I'm more of a uncertain. I'm more in the realm of uncertainty when I work.
It seems like you've consistently pushed yourself into challenging and difficult situations. Would you say that it's fear that holds people back from achieving their goals?
God, it blocks us. Fear is the thing that it's the biggest defilement. It is a real defilement. I mean, people say it's natural to keep you safe, but it's outgrown its need. It's not, the majority of fear we experience as humans it doesn't make any sense. I don't know where it comes from. Is it an implant? Is it just genetic? Is it just like our human nature? But anyway, I mean, it's maybe the karma of humans that we're born with this natural instinct to fear things, like cyclically, you know, stuck down here. That's the first energy signature that comes in, and then it just traps us to begin with. You know, because when you're fearful, you're closed, you don't expand, you don't notice anything, your heart's closed, you can't do anything. And I'm just as guilty. I have cortisol and fear at times when I'm around and alone. But you know, I mean, it's not easy to not be scared in a new situation. It's really not, but you've really just got to breathe into it. And even just put yourself into a situation that gets you fearful is the step to then take the next step to breathe into the fear, to then ask yourself what you're fearing, to then just push through it and overcome it. Even if you start crying or feeling emotional or whatever you go through, you need to really remove that samskara of fear, because it really does keep us limited to our fullest potentials, you know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cut!
Very nice.
Fabuloso. Good questions.